Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Edmond. I'm joined by my star producer and co-host, Chris Brito. It's the best time of the year as the playoffs are officially beginning Saturday. We'll break down all the series and tell you which Knick is key to them moving on to their first second-round series in 10 years. Before we get to all that, Chris, my friend, how are you?
Hey, Steve, how can you not be excited about the Knicks right now? The Knicks have a chance to, in my opinion, beat the Cavaliers. We'll discuss some of the keys in that game, but right now, I just want to take the moment that we're finally here in the playoffs. It's the time of year that we enjoy the most as an NBA fan, and now that our Knicks are on it, it just makes it even more. The stakes are higher. So for the next few weeks, I really hope that the Knicks certainly make it worthwhile. All right, so let's get to the Knicks Cavs series. I'm of the belief that the Knicks can take the series in six. I like the way Knicks in six sounds, but Knicks in seven also sounds great. I'm not going to complain. I think the first game will probably set the tone as it does for many series, but I think it's equally important because you win that game and you sort of get in the young Cavs heads. I think we could probably withstand the first two losses, but I think it might hurt the Cavs more than it would hurt us, being that they're the top seed. And in terms of individual matchups, I know you have yours, but I think it's going to be, again, on Brunson. It's going to be, a series duel in terms of offensive scoring. It's going to be less about defense and more about who scores the most. And I think Brunson, there's no one on that team that can guard Brunson except maybe the big guys. And just because Donovan Mitchell and Garland can't keep up with him. I mean, you saw what Brunson did the other night to those guys. He torched them, right? And I expect that to be replicated. And the other thing, too, and one of the understated aspects of the Knicks is the bench mob. Our bench is way better than the Cavs bench. And so I think those two keys will be important for the series.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think Brunson kind of has to be the best player in the series, and I don't see why he couldn't. He did it in the regular season. He all throughout. He showed in the playoffs that he could be a premier number one option. And my key to the series is going to be Evan Mobley versus Julius Randle. The Cavs, led by Evan Mobley, had the best defense in the sport. No one really talked about it at all, but Mobley was the number one guy there. He can help defend. He can guard 1 through 5. He's incredible. And you're going to bring in Julius Randle back, who has not played in it's going to be 2+ weeks. He needs to get into a rhythm immediately, and he needs to attack Mobley and get him in foul trouble. Because if you can get Mobley to not play 40 minutes a night, the Knicks will win this series. I think it's as simple as that. And it comes down to Randle being efficient and able to be aggressive. And those two things have often been one or the other with Randle. And that's why I believe Randle versus Mobley is the most important thing in the series.
And here's the other thing. Here's the thing that you can control between the both of things. Like, he needs to be aggressive. That's the thing he can control every game, no matter what.
Yeah.
But he needs to be like, I hate to use the word like, he needs to be like aware of the situation, right? Like, I think he has a habit of trying to play a little bit of hero ball. I mean, a lot of times. But I think it's going to be even more important where every game in a series will be so pivotal to whether the team's fate, that Randle needs to be able to make adjustments, and I know he will. And I'm just expecting him to like be at full strength when we play the Cavs on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, Mobley was pretty good in terms of not getting in too many foul troubles. He averaged a little under 3 a game. I was kind of just looking before the show to see where that ranks around the NBA, and he finished 21st in fouls this year, 11th with Julius Randle. So I think it might also be key for Julius to not get in foul trouble against Mobley and the other way around. But it's going to be a great series. I'm gonna go with you. Let's be optimistic. Let's have fun. Let's say Knicks in 6. I think if it goes to 7 games, Cleveland's taking it at home. But Knicks in 6. Let's go. First playoff series win in 10 years. And I'm going to owe you a big apology in 2 weeks on our show when I said how ridiculous it was for you to say second round if this actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just happy that the team is in the playoffs. I'm excited for our future. Um, a lot of our core is like under 25,
Yeah.
and I can't complain. Like,
And just don't get destroyed in this series where Donovan Mitchell averages 40 a game and all the newspaper headlines and Twitter headlines are all just the Knicks need a star, the Knicks need a star. They should have got Mitchell. They need a new star because I'm not really sure how they improve this team with a star this summer. Obviously, you never know. It's the NBA. But at the same time, I don't want to be waiting on the next guy for 3 months in the offseason and hoping we can blow this team up for some great star. So let's move on. Other interesting series. We got a bunch of really good first round series. I'm gonna go first with my Kings Warriors. I think this is just going to be a great offensive matchup. It seems like the Warriors are finally healthy and the Kings are having arguably their best season ever. And so they finish as one of the all-time best offenses of all time and one of the worst defenses of all time. And the question I always say is like, does defense really matter? We're going to find out. And believe it or not, as a 3 seed, they're actually heavy underdogs in this series, despite getting home field advantage. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out because everyone kind of assumes the Warriors are just kind of waiting for this moment and that they're not actually old and slow like they showed in the regular season.
yeah, and I think the biggest edge the Kings have is actually not on the court.
Okay.
I think it's Mike Brown.
Oh,
And I say this because he's someone who understands the psyche of the Warriors. I think he's someone who has been with the team for such a long time that if there was anyone who can concoct a plan to sort of halt these guys, I think it's him. That being said, this series in particular is such a toss up. Like, I think obviously I'm rooting for the Knicks, but you could argue that one's a toss up too. Um, but I don't know, man. I feel like the Warriors haven't really shown it yet, and I think
but they didn't last regular season either. And then they won the whole thing.
well, that was because
That's
Curry was injured, though. That's the difference.
they missed Wiggins, who was their second best player this year for half the year.
Okay, I'm gonna make a prediction. Kings in 6.
Okay. I'm going to take Warriors in 6. I think it's just crucial for Sacramento to get this first game or first 2 games at home. I think that'll kind of calm everybody's nerves. This is the longest playoff drought in the history of the NBA. And so the crowd is going to be louder than they've ever been. And I think it might actually be hard for the Kings to be ready for that compared to the Warriors who have been under big crowds in this time of the year for a decade. So I think getting that first game or getting game 2, I think is just going to be absolutely critical for Sacramento.
Yeah, and we also don't know how Wiggins is doing. We don't know if he's there.
He's
Like,
there. He's ready to go.
we haven't seen the eye test though. We
I
haven't.
mean, in terms of he will play, that's what we
Oh
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. My point was we don't know how ready he is, but you know what? If we're taking their word by it, so be it. The other
Real quick with the Warriors, last thing, and then we'll move on. Guess who was their top win shares player this year?
it was definitely not Poole.
Okay.
Was it Draymond?
No,
I don't know who.
it's Kevon Looney at 8.7.
Wow. Who doesn't love a dark horse?
Believe it or not, Kevon Looney played in all 82 games this year. Shot 63% from the floor. Basically, all those were dunks, but that's okay. And I bet they're pretty happy they have him on their roster after giving him the contract last summer. All right, you want to pick your favorite series?
Yeah, I want to talk about the Lakers Grizzlies. There's been a lot of like back and forth between a lot of chirping between like the Grizzlies and the Lakers. Notably, they had that incident a few months ago where that even Deion Sanders was also involved. And it's going to be fun to see, kind of like in a metaphorical sense, the person that the NBA has sort of chosen to be the face of the NBA, and LeBron James, who was obviously who has been the face for such a long time. Um, and obviously there's obviously the smaller aspects about who's gonna guard who, and then the whole Dylan Brooks aspect to it, like the perennial ish talker. It's gonna be a fun series. Like I think the Lakers could easily win, but I think people are sort of underestimating how good the Grizzlies actually are. Um, so go ahead why you think it's an interesting series, and then I'll tell you in how many games what I think.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting series because it just looks like there's mismatches everywhere where I have no like Jaren Jackson's obviously going to guard one of LeBron or AD. I don't know who's going to guard the other one. Like
Yeah.
Brooks is too small. They're going to try that, I think. I'm not sure how that's going to go. They're missing Steven Adams. And then on the other end, can LeBron guard John Morant for 2/3 of a game for 2 weeks? I'm not sure he can at this point in his career. So I think there's just going to be mismatches everywhere. I think it's going to be a really fun, entertaining series. I do think Memphis is just the better team. I think they have more talent. I think we're kind of overestimating this Laker team, who, let's face it, that fourth quarter and overtime against Minnesota was one of the worst things I've seen in a long time. Both sides missed every shot. It was terrible. And now you're talking about a Memphis team being slept on who thinks it's like us against the world. I'm going to take them, and I think it's going to be them in 6 games.
I actually don't think it's going to be that close, and I think it'll be 5 games for Memphis.
Okay.
And I just want to retract something. It was Shannon Sharp.
Deion Sanders would have made some news too, though. That would have been cool. All right, Chris, let's move on to every other series. So obviously, we still have the play-ins Friday night to determine who's going to be the 8th seed. I think you and I both agree that whoever it is, Nuggets and Bucks shouldn't really have a tough time getting through those series. Would you agree?
I think so too. I think the Bucks are just like so incredibly like gifted. I think they're going to win the NBA championship eventually. They were my preseason pick, if you remember.
Remember that. Okay, we'll get to our finals picks right at the end of the show. But last Western Conference playoff matchup, Suns Clippers. To me, this could have made the case as the best series so far, with the Suns as kind of like the new sleeper favorite versus my preseason favorite, the Clippers. But once again, the Clippers have disappointed me by not having Kawhi and Paul George ready to go. Kawhi is ready, Paul George is not. And I think without him, they're just not going to be able to match the Suns' firepower. And I think this is going to be a series that probably ends in 5 games.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Suns. I just don't see how the Clippers could take this. Um, I think it might be a sweep
Yeah.
unless Paul George comes back.
Phoenix, Denver, though, in 2 weeks in the second round, that would be must watch TV. I think the winner of that is going to win I think the winner of that's going to win the whole thing. That's my belief.
Oh
So
yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But let's move on to the other East teams. We have 2 more series. We have Sixers, Nets. Obviously, the Sixers had an up and down season led by MVP favorite Joel Embiid. Can this new look net team make any noise?
No, but I think the Nets can steal 1 or 2 games.
Okay, I agree. I think the Nets are going to take a game where Mikal Bridges goes off and everybody kind of doubts Philly for a good 24 hours, and James Harden is 3 of 18 shooting. And
It's
I
it's
think
gonna be game 4 that they win.
I'm going to say it's going to be game 3 at home, the first net game at home. You're going to have all 18 Brooklyn fans cheering and going nuts, and Philly's
18.
going to lose that one. So I'm going to go Sixers in 5 there. In the final series, we'll talk about Boston versus Atlanta, 2-7 matchup.
Boston. It's gonna be a sweep. I don't see how the Hawks can win.
Yeah, I agree. I think this Hawk team was just really disappointing this year. They seem to have a lot of issues going on off the court. And I think this might be Trae Young's final series as a Hawk.
Mm, okay.
So That'll be that. I'm expecting
It's not
big
even
changes in Atlanta this summer.
it's not even summer yet, and there's already a hot take.
I love it. I love it. All right, Chris, let's get to our final thoughts right after this. All right, Chris, final thoughts time here. We just teased it before, our NBA Finals predictions. I'm going with Milwaukee versus Denver. I think it's going to be Nikola Jokic versus Giannis Antetokounmpo. Obviously, the Bucks are going to need Chris Middleton back. They don't need him back this week against either Miami or Chicago, but they are going to need him for the second round on, and I think he will come back and be great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one, man.
All right. In other news, Miles Bridges officially got a 30-game suspension. And the weirdest part about this to you and I is he's apparently served 20 of the 30 games. I don't really understand what happened here, where I guess they were trying to punish him on a team next year, but I don't know where they got 30 from. Why is 20 already served? It just seems like they kind of made this up.
I think it was a complete botched effort because it even sounds like it was something that was maybe like discussed or something that may have been like talked about before, like the new like why would you get these 20 games? Why would these 20 games count when he didn't play all last season? We didn't know if he was eligible or not. And wasn't he a free agent last season, or was
So this is what's interesting about it. So he was a restricted free agent. The Hornets gave him the qualifying offer, which he did not sign. If he signs that, he makes $7.9 million last year, and then is an unrestricted free agent this summer. He did not sign it in time. And so that means they have the option of either making him a restricted free agent again this summer and giving him the qualifying offer for 7.9 million, or they can just let him walk. And I have no idea how it's going to play out. Mitch Kupchak, who is running basketball operations in Charlotte, basically said, we had interest in bringing him back, but we are waiting for the NBA to finish their ruling. And here we are with that. So my guess is he's going to go back to Charlotte on a 1-year deal, 1 year, 7.9 million, prove it, qualifying offer. And he'll miss the first 10 games. He'll come back and he'll be good. And people will forget about this, unfortunately, and he'll play and get a big contract in the summer of 2024.
I think it's such an awful way in terms of how the NBA has handled like some instances. We're gonna get to another one after this, but
I do think he cost himself at least tens of millions of dollars, though.
yes, I don't disagree.
Even if he comes back and plays great, I think he still cost himself tens of millions of dollars. Obviously, it should be more based on what this was.
For sure. I just think that the moral equivalency isn't completely there. Like how, granted, this is all alleged, but there are some things that you just simply can't like forget, right? And like we don't need to get into too much of that aspect, but it's just like how the NBA sort of handle this, it doesn't make quite sense to me. But you're probably right. And the sad thing is that we're going to probably go back next season. It'll probably be mentioned on the air for, a few times every time like they play a new team. And it'll be one of those situations where we just forget. Move on.
Yeah.
He plays basketball and good for him. And
yeah. And, if I'm him, obviously you're going to do everything you can to kind of apologize, maybe donate a big chunk of your salary to some kind of domestic abuse charity or foundation or something. Like there are ways for him to not make this right, but make this better. And I hope he takes those steps. Obviously a different weird NBA situation. The Mavs were fined $750,000 for tanking. It's very weird for two reasons. One, who cares about $750,000? They were not docked the draft pick. They were not docked any other picks. And $750,000 is nothing to Mark Cuban. It's basically barely worth the paper fine it's sent on. So to me, it doesn't matter. I don't even think Cuban is upset about this. Then on the other end, if you're trying to defend the Mavs, there were many other teams doing this. The Blazers shut down Damian Lillard. You had basically whatever was going on in Houston. LaMelo got hurt, but they basically stopped trying in January. There was a ton of teams doing this kind of stuff, but because Dallas did it so obviously, 2 days before the season ended, they're the ones being punished. And again, it's a very light punishment, but it's also weird that they're the only ones punished, but it's also barely a punishment. So I think the NBA just handled it poorly all the way around.
Well, here's my thing with that though. Like I understand them being penalized for for doing what they did, but you can't just like you're cheapening the product by talking about it, even though it's understood that if you don't play certain players toward the end of the season, that's considered tanking. So I just wanted the penalty to be higher, so you want to prevent doing this
This from happening in the future.
right.
This penalty does not stop anybody from doing this in the future. Also, keep in mind, they've done this before. They tanked before. That was the Luka draft. They end up with trading a first round pick to move from 5 to 3 to get Luka. And Mark Cuban admitted we sat players. We told them, the wins and losses don't matter and all these different things. And this is now strike 2, and there's still no real fine. And to me, that's why tanking is the best. There's no real fine for it. Like, you're gonna what? Is Cuban really gonna come to the GM and stuff and tell them, oh, don't be so obvious next time, you cost me $750,000? No, this is probably his idea. So I just think everybody in this situation was stupid. The Mavs were stupid for how obvious they made it. The NBA was stupid for basically not really finding them. And they were also stupid for not really investigating other teams. So this whole thing was terrible. It's bad for the NBA because you try to hype up the last couple of days of the season. Oh, like all this stuff matters, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Multiple teams, not just Dallas, multiple teams came out and said, you know what? Being the 10th seed doesn't really matter. And granted, we had some teams that said it does matter, but a lot of teams didn't. And they have to find a way to better incentivize these teams to make those play-ins matter.
And just to go back, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. This podcast was recorded before the Bulls Heat game.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of rooting the Bulls in order to give the whole 10 seed a little bit more legitimacy. I mean, you're probably right in terms of like no one really cares about being a 10th seed. It's the new 9th seed before the play-in. But my point is with the penalty, how do the Knicks, and granted, I know it's like two different things, how did the Knicks lose a pick for doing what they did? And the Mavericks only got a slap in the wrist. Like
I mean, they're two different things. And I think
but like here's why I think the pick thing, or why losing on purpose is probably worse. Like, you are impacting your NBA product that way, whereas the Knicks thing is just between two teams and getting one player that, like, whatever. I don't know. I'm sort of disappointed in the way the NBA handled it,
Yeah, no, I think the NBA's actions have said that the tanking is not as bad as basically tampering.
No, definitely not.
That's what they're saying. Whether that's true or not, that's what their actions are saying. But Chris, is there anything else before we wrap up the show?
No, Stevie, I hope you enjoyed the NBA playoffs. I know you had a great time last weekend.
Yeah, no, it's great. Chris and I got to see Knicks Pelicans in New Orleans. We did not see a win, but we got to see some great NBA action. That is going to do it for us here on the All Hoops podcast. Thank you for listening and watching. We'll be back next week to discuss the first round of the NBA playoffs.
Bye, everyone.